with others during the webinar. So there is that chat option within the webinar. And the other thing, from a logistical perspective, we'd like to ask you to keep yourselves muted throughout the talk today. And if you do have any really big questions, please do send them to us through the chat. So I now will introduce our first speaker, Luis Gonzalez. He is the chief of the Web Development and Visualization Unit here at UNSD. He joined the Statistics Division in 2005, and he works with national statistical offices and international partners on methodology and capacity development projects, particularly in the fields of economic statistics, data quality, development indicators, and the coordination of national statistical activities for the SDGs. And Luis co-leads the initiatives on data interoperability and the integration of geospatial information and statistics in the SDGs. So Luis will now I give the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Linda, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you for the invitation to present a bit of the work we do here in UNSD on data visualization for the SDGs, how we can use visualizations to measure progress towards the SDGs. So I'm very happy to share some of these materials with you, and looking forward also for a very good discussion and to your questions and feedback. Let me start by just putting out this quote from Nathan Zhao that you might know is one of the best data visualizers around. And I like very much this quote he put out. Our job is to set the stage to help users get to know the data in front of them, to the point they can formulate and respond questions that help them achieve their goals. So what I like about this is, just to set the stage of everything we do, we have to have in mind the objectives of our audience. So our task is to make this data that we produce or that we curate usable, actionable, to fulfill the goals of the users, not the goals that we imagine the users may have or should have. So having said that, I think it is good also to talk a bit about more generally what do we want to achieve. And on our side, the vision that we have in terms of the visualization of data for the SDGs is to make more embedded data open, accessible, and used to the fullest extent possible for improving people's lives. So this is also another important point that we want to keep in mind, is how can we help data have impact on improving people's lives, on improving sustainable development. And also, as a sort of curiosity, I want to say we are building on the work of generations. So we are not starting from scratch. And I think we have to recognize all the body of knowledge and experience that has been accumulated through generations in disseminating data, making data available. And I grabbed recently this table from the first statistical yearbook of the United Nations back in 1948, the first issue. And in it, we presented data with the means that we had available at that time. Tabular data in printed form. You see here indicators that are still very relevant: infant mortality. And one of the things I want to say is this is already there is already a lot of thinking behind this presentation of the data. So we should not be dismissive of the simple traditional ways of presenting data. We should just leverage them and bring them to the next level. So the use of typography, the use of ordering the data conveys meaning and makes the data more accessible to the reader. So again, we are building on the work that has started already generations in the past, and we are now taking the challenge of using the means that we have at our disposal now to continue this same task. So this is to come to the context now of the data revolution, which is here. the data revolution for sustainable development gives us technology that makes huge amounts of data widely and easily accessible as they have not been before. But still, this data does not have much value in its raw state. To support effective policy and decision making, what matters is not the data itself, is the insights that people can derive from it, and we can help in this task if we are creative enough, and if we are if we put design thinking and the user's needs center and front. So seeing is believing. It is very different. The information and the insights and the actionable conclusions that we can derive from data presented on a visual space rather than just on tabular form or printed tables, something like that. So we need to try to use this visual space to help users find relationships in data. So good visualizations are about helping people discover trends, patterns, outliers that are not evident from just looking at the numbers, and using or building on the cognitive capabilities of the users themselves to understand changes over time, to identify subgroups in the population, in different populations, to discover geographic patterns, to discover correlations and plausible causation. By putting data on the visual space, we can leverage all of our cognitive capabilities to make connections and to identify patterns that give us insights. Now, I think it is important to think what kinds of tools do we have to work with, and what is the purpose of the visualizations that we are producing. There are two main types of visualizations in my mind. There are exploratory visualizations and explanatory visualizations. So the first type, exploratory, they help us generate multiple views very fast on the same data set in order to discover trends, patterns in the data. So that is very much the work we do when we are producing the data, checking the data quality, and trying to understand the raw data. And there are wonderful tools right now that help us do that in a very fast manner. I'm thinking of the suites of tools such as Tableau, R, and so on, that for the specialist, for the data specialist, they help us just generate as many visualizations, perspectives from the same data set. But that is just the first stage. Then comes the stage of explaining what we have found, of telling a story. So these other types of tools that help us highlight what we have already discovered and to communicate specific insights to target audiences that we have. And I think it's good just to organize our work to make this difference. Are we doing exploratory work? Are we doing explanatory work? And are we choosing the right tools for the right purpose? And finally, another point I wanted to make is the importance of providing context. Data visualization is not just about the graphs, it's not just about the visuals. It also requires explaining the story behind the data. So the way we design visualizations will affect how users interpret the information, and we have then the role of our judgment, our subjective judgment, and our expertise plays a key role. Also about quality, and it's a bit referring to what Linda mentioned at the beginning. A precondition to be able to do good visualizations is to have good data. So we need to be very familiar with the data. We need to be sure that the data that we are using is accurate, reliable, coming from an authoritative source, so that we can move confidently to storytelling and visual representation. So data checking, verification,